Hello, my friends. My name is Josh, and I'm an alcoholic and a sex addict, and thank you for the opportunity to allow me to share today. I saw that Vicky spoke a couple weeks ago on anger, so I was like, you know what? Why don't we just run through the emotions, and I'll talk about fear today, and I titled it, "Are You Afraid of the Dark?" That has nothing to do with what I'm actually going to talk about. I just remember that it was a show that was on in my childhood in the early 90s, and it was about this group of kids called the Midnight Society, and it's like they would sneak into the forest that night and they would like tell these scary stories, and it's like see who will get scared from it. But I wanted to talk about fear, and I think for most of my life, it's like I never actually believed that fear. I didn't think I had any fear. Like I didn't go around facing a lot of, of course it's like, of course I don't want to get up in front of a group of people. And of course I don't want to maybe jump out of a plane, or there's certain things like that. But I didn't think that fear actually had much of a hold on my life. But when we look at fear, like what is fear? Fear is this emotion that we have to either like a real or a perceived threat. And I was thinking about it this morning that it's like, how do we, if our emotions are God-given, because often like I'll think, okay, that's a negative emotion. I don't want to feel that. But if fear is God-given, like how is it good? Because I think fear a lot of times protects me. Fear, when I would be at work, in the trades, fear is good because if I have to go outside onto a high ledge or something, I'm scared of heights. So I'm going to make sure that I tie off, and it's like, that's keeping me, safe. But I think fear can also have a position where I have an abnormal reaction to it. And when I have that abnormal reaction, fear is almost being taken out of line. And the fear now, I think, is good because it becomes a signpost for me. Like it becomes this thing that it's like these almost like, this warning symbol. Like it's like I'm coming up to the train tracks and the crossing light is down and you see the lights flashing. Well, it's good because it's telling me don't cross the train tracks right now. Because if you do, you're going to get hit. So fear can act as a signpost for me that it's like something's going on. So what does fear look like? For me, I know that it looks like, I might have a different, rate of breathing. I might feel, anxious. So for me, anxiety will come across as, sleep problems. It can come across with all of a sudden I notice during the day that I start grinding my teeth, or I'm stressed. I notice for me, if I start to really control something, maybe there's a little bit of fear going on there. And I think we all react to fear differently when we feel it. So I might feel it in one way and you might feel it in another. And I got 3 little kids, and what the beautiful thing about this, I have some friends that might enjoy some of these stories. But the thing with kids is I see so much of myself in them, not in the sense that they came from me, but the fact that it's like, man, just their emotions are so much more out there. And I'm like, wow, it's like I see myself in that position. So what happens with my daughter when she gets scared? If I give my daughter, say, a word of discipline or correction at the supper table, she wants to run. She's 3.5, almost 4. She runs away into a corner and cowers. If I want to give my son a word of discipline or correction, he doesn't run. Sometimes he does, but he doesn't run away and cower the way she does. He all of a sudden gets loud and big and aggressive, and it's like, I'm gonna stand up here. And it's like two very different responses, but they're both coming out of a place of fear. So like the other day, for example, we're getting ready, the family's getting ready. It's 7:30 in the morning, and we're getting the kids ready to go to church. And my son just was not listening. He's 5.5. and he just wasn't listening. And it's like, we're going through the same cycle here. It's like, okay, no, it's time to get dressed. And I told him, I'm like, listen, I'm like, if you don't listen, I'm like, there's going to be consequences to this. Well, he continued to not listen. So I said, hey, when you get to church, you have a friend that comes to church. It's an adult friend named June, and his friend has a motorcycle. And I told Henry, I'm like, listen, Henry, I'm like, you're not going to be able to ride June's motorcycle today. My friend June took Henry on a little motorcycle ride the other day, and it's like, that's all Henry wants to do and talk about. And I said, listen, you've been disobedient. You're not going to go on a motorcycle ride. What does he do? He gets loud, he gets big, and he gets aggressive. But when I break it down with him and I go upstairs to his room to check on him, because I sent him up to his room, his first words were, June doesn't like me anymore. June doesn't like me anymore. And in my mind, I'm like, how do we get there? I'm like, that's not what I said at all. But I'm like, but this is what he internalized. And he has this fear now that all of a sudden it's like, my big buddy June, my friend June, it's like, he doesn't like me anymore. I'm unlikable. I'm unlovable. Oh no. And I walk him through this fear that it's like, no, that's not what's happening at all. I get to speak truth in him, but that fear is a signpost that something is going on deeper inside of him. The other night, it's easy to share stories about kids because they're not, it's not my own story. But the other night, we have a team meeting that Joanne and I went to. And after the team meeting, we got in the car. And what's the first thing Joanne says to me? She says, "What's wrong with you? You were quiet tonight. You aren't even participating. Like you're sick," or like, she didn't say that, but it's like, but I'm like, she's giving me the gears. And what do? My first thing is to defend myself. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I can't, like, I just wanted to listen. Oh, I wanted to, and it's like, and then I start going back at her. And as I sat in bed later that night and I thought about it, it's like, I'm like, there's actually a fear that's there. The fear in that night is that it's like, oh, we're talking about all this stuff. And for some reason I can get in my head and be like, oh, can I even process out loud what I'm thinking? Or is it going to sound stupid? And I have this image that I want to uphold. I want people to see me in a certain way. So maybe I'm going to control what I say. Because if I just stay silent, it's going to be better than me sounding something that's not put together. I have this fear of how people are going to see me. But what's the signpost? What's pointing out to me? My reaction to Joanne. Like, that's an abnormal reaction. I shouldn't be, when she confronts me on something, like, I sound soft all of a sudden. Why am I reacting to her that way? But it's because I have this underlying fear inside there that, that came out in that moment. And I think these fears come out because it's like, I try and live life out of self-reliance. So when these things pop up for me, I have to know the signs as to what are the signs in my life. Because when these signs are popping up in my life, now I know that it's like, man, am I actually connected to God in this moment? There's a story that I heard. It was a year or two ago. I heard this story, and it's this Native American story where there's a tribe, I think in the Michigan or Ontario area, and it's just like, I think it's like this coming of age, or like, when it's like you're going from this boyhood into manhood, and it's like, and you have to complete some tasks in order to make that jump. And in this story, with this tribe, what would happen is when a boy's about to come, to go from transition from being a boy to a man, the men of that tribe, or the elders of that tribe, they would take him away. And all these other men have gone through this experience, yet no one talks about it. So it's like but they all come back, and it's like they've all been drastically changed. So they take the boy, what is he, 12, 13 years old, and they take him at the end of the day, while it's still daylight, and they take him to this place in the forest that is a very sacred ground for this tribe, a very spiritual ground. And they take, and there's a clearing in the forest. And when they get there, there's a tree in the middle, and they tell him, they said, you know what? You have to sit by this tree all night. We're going to blindfold you, and you're not allowed to move all night. All right, I think I can do that. So he goes, sits down, they blindfold him, and all of a sudden he can't see anything. It becomes dark, and he hears the footsteps of the elders and the men walking away. And all of a sudden he's left in this wilderness by himself. And he's hunted in the forest. He knows all about, what this forest, what the capabilities of it are. He hears the bears in the distance. He hears the wolves. He hears the cougars. And he's terrified. And he thinks about leaving. But he's like, but I can't leave. I have to stay. So he stays there, and he doesn't take off the blindfold. And at the end of the night, the sun rises, and he starts to feel the first, rays of sun against his face. And starting to kind of go through his blindfold. Well, they said I could take my blindfold off once day breaks. So he takes his blindfold off. And as his eyes are getting accustomed to the light, he sees a shadow in the up ahead, and he can't really make it out. But as his eyes, become more adjusted to the sun and to the light, he recognizes that it's a man. And when he sees the man more closely, he recognizes that the man is actually his father. And all night, his father has been there watching out over him, with a knife in one hand and a bow and arrow on his back, waiting there. That if anything was to come to attack, or any threat was to come against his son, he was there to protect him. As a protective father would, as a caring father would, as a warrior father would. When I live my life, do I live with the same sense of security as if I'm being blindfolded, but it's like I got my father? I might not know the threats around me and all that's going on, but it's like, do I believe that God is there watching out over me, protecting me, keeping me safe? And I think so often it's like I can forget that God is there. And I can get caught up in this moment and realize, or think that it's like, man, back to self-reliance. I got to figure this out myself because it is up to me. And, the big book says.
Okay, still muted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. My computer, Zoom shut off. But so.
We lost you right when you said the big book says.
The big book says, and then following the big book, I said, I'm not going to share out of the big book right now. I'm going to share a story from the Bible first. But there's a story, I shared in my share last week, that I'm going through the book of Kings. And, there's this prophet Elijah. And in this last section that I was reading this past week, God says to Elijah, it's like, listen, I want you to go to the king, and this is what I have for you. This is the message, I have for you. Okay, so he goes to the king, and the king at this point had basically, killed someone in order that he could have their land, that he could have their plot of land. So it says he goes to this King Ahab, and what's the king's response to him once he sees him? The king says, have you found me, oh my enemy? And like, even right there, it's like, you can think of that as this form of aggression, and this, like, which it is, or it's like, or it's like this thing of like, I'm gonna put something on you. But I think really it's like, I think there's a lot of fear there. And I think the reason I bring that up is like, because fear can look different in all of us. Fear doesn't necessarily have to be like, it doesn't need to look like I'm cowering in the corner away from something. But if I'm controlling a scenario, or if I'm denying something, or deflecting something, these are all forms of how I could be of how fear can be shown in my life. But the big book says some good stuff. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, on the bottom of page 67, it says the short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. And again, I never thought that until all of a sudden I start recognizing the signs in my life to see how it affects and how it touches my life. But it says this, it was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through it. I thought that was interesting when I read that, because I'm reading that this morning, and it's like, fear is something that touches every aspect of our lives. So it's in the present, but then all of a sudden it goes to the past, where it's like, it was an evil and corroding thread. And when I read that, I'm like, huh. Fear was an evil and corroding thread because I have a power greater than myself that I can go to, that I don't have to rely on my self-reliance, but I have God who's working within me to remove these fears. It goes on to say, let me just find it here. It says on the next page, page 68, perhaps there is a better way. We think so, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role he assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us and humbly rely on him. Does he enable us to match calamity with serenity? That is not the paragraph that I wanted to read, but that is what I just read. What I wanted to read was this. We ask him to remove our fears and direct our attention to what he would have us be. Actually, before even going earlier, it says, instead we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fears and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear. And I think I can easily just be like, okay, God, remove this fear. And man, God might remove the fear right then and there. But how many times when it says, instead we let him demonstrate through us what he can do? There are things I never would have done 3 years ago. But what happens is, why wouldn't I have done them? Because I'm terrified. Like, I don't want to speak in front of someone. Like, I don't want to have to lead this group or like, I just want to stick to myself. But when I recognize that there's a fear there, and it's like, okay, God, what do you want to do with this? I could actually step into that fear, so I could actually put forward with an action now. And when I step into that fear with an action, I get to let God demonstrate through me what he can do. God removes the fear, and God actually takes my attention and puts it onto something else. I'm not scared all of a sudden about, how people see me or what my image is, or even what just happened. That is something that prior, if I was ever doing something like this, that could have thrown me off, and I could get all stumbled and
fussy and whatever, but it's like, we're just rolling with it now, because I get to actually see now what God wants to do. And because it's not about me or about how you see me. It's about allowing God to work through me. And I think when I begin to trust God with these things, when I trust that God is there as God, and that I'm not God, and it's not me and my self-reliance. It's like, trusting God doesn't mean that I'm going to get the outcome I want. Because I often think it's like, oh, okay, well, if I trust God, then it's like, obviously this is going to go well. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I still fall flat on my face. Or maybe you still get the diagnosis, or maybe you still have financial problems, or you still have whatever it is. You still have the relational issue that's happening. But those things that are happening around you don't control you anymore, because you're not actually being led by the fear that's pushing you. I'm actually being led by the Spirit of God. Because it says, God is the director. I'm just the actor. God is the principal. I'm the agent. God is the father. My children, if I'm doing my job properly, which not always I am, but my children shouldn't be running the house. I should be the one leading, guiding, and directing my household. And if you're to walk into my house, sometimes you're probably like, yeah, that you're lying right now, because those kids are running the house. And I'm just imperfect, and we're just doing the best we can. But that's how do I have that view of my Heavenly Father, that God is the one running the show, and it's not my responsibility. And how I do that is I do that through the discipline of conscious contact with Him. And when I get that, when I walk into that, fear's always going to creep up. But boom, the more I recognize it, the more I know it, the more I can turn to the Father and release that fear, and let Him show me how He wants me to be, and He'll show me what steps I want to take. So that's what I want to leave you guys with today. That, are we trusting God, that He is God, and He is greater than I think sometimes I can even try and comprehend, or how I even try and vocalize. I don't even know if I can properly describe how perfect God is. And yet here I am trying to use imperfect words and stumbling over my words in terms of how to describe that. But do I have a perfect Father in heaven who's actually watching out for me? And can I just take that step today, that it's like, man, there's this sign right in front of me that something's going on in my life, and I feel it because, you know what? I didn't sleep well last night, or I can't control my thoughts, or I have this relational, and all these things. And it's like, can I just turn that over to the will of God right now, and just let Him lead me? So thank you for allowing me to share, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.